Today we're going to be taking a look at 3 photos that were taken by hikers just moments before disaster struck. A few of these photos look normal at first glance until you learn what happened after the camera was clicked. And honestly, some of the other photos look just straight up disturbing to begin with. And then when you learn the story behind them, well, they just get taken to a whole new level. So with that said, I'm now going to take you on a virtual trip to the beautiful mountains of Colorado, one of my favorite states to visit. Now, this trip is totally free, but you must hit that subscribe button to cover your admission on this trip, especially if you're a repeat viewer. Okay, let's do it. These photos show the last moments of Dr. Toni Henthorn's life. Literally just minutes after these photos were taken, she would end up falling to her death 130 feet off of a cliff. And as if that wasn't disturbing enough, by the way, her fall, well, it was no accident. In September of 2012, Toni Henthorn and her husband, Harold Henthorn, they took a trip to Rocky Mountain National Park to celebrate their 12th anniversary as a couple. On September 29th, they decided to go for a short hike up Deer Mountain, which was supposedly chosen by Harold himself. Now, I read a report stating that Toni had like bad knees or something and wouldn't have had like the physical strength to complete a difficult hike, but regardless of this, that is exactly what the couple would end up doing. By all accounts that we have, at least, the hike started off fairly normally. I mean, they were just going along, and they even ended up taking these photos together. You know, they're smiling, they're looking just about as normal and wholesome as could be. But of course, as I've established here, this was not gonna be a normal hike. In fact, Harold Henthorn wasn't even a normal husband, and you'll understand what I mean by that in just a second. That very same afternoon, Toni's brother received a text from Harold that immediately sent chills up his spine. This text read, quote, "Barry, urgent. Toni is injured in Estes Park, fall from rock." Which, can you imagine getting that text about your sister from your sister's husband? That's pretty brutal, obviously, but the follow-up text that Harold sent was even worse. He sent a very disturbing text that read, quote, "She's gone." I use the word disturbing a lot in my videos, but I don't use it lightly, folks. That's a very disturbing text, and the rest of this story, as you could probably tell, is also very disturbing. I'm about to tell you literally everything I could find about this case, but first, I do want to lighten things up for just a moment and tell you about Upside. I mean, it's literally in the name, right? Upside is the sponsor of this video, so I'm preaching to the choir here, I'm sure. These days, it seems like everything out there is so expensive, and doing basic things like just going to the grocery store and definitely filling up your gas tank has never hurt more than it hurts now. So this is where Upside comes in. Upside is a free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like the ones I just mentioned there, things like gas, groceries, and even takeout, food, dining, things like that. Frequent Upside users earn an average of $340 in cash back per year. And by the way, guys, this is real cash that you earn. It's not points or credits or any BS like that. I think it's important to mention that and make that clear. In fact, yesterday afternoon, I needed to fill up my gas tank. And so the first thing that I did was open Upside and check the offers that they had for gas in my area. I found one that looked pretty good. And so I claimed it, and I got 26 cents in cash back per gallon of gas, which, if you think about it, essentially took the price of the gas from like $3.41 per gallon down to just $3.15 per gallon. So once you claim an offer in the app, all you have to do is just go buy whatever it is that you're buying like you normally would using your card that's connected to the app, and then you'll get the cash back. It's that easy. I've been like working Upside like into my daily routine, I guess you could say, on all my, normal regular expenses. And it's honestly been a fantastic way to earn some extra cash back. I mean, who doesn't want some extra money in your pocket? And the best part is, like I said, you're going to be buying all of this stuff anyways. I mean, you can earn cash back at places like 7-Eleven, Mobile, or even restaurants like Chipotle or Domino's, both of which I frequent far too often, by the way. Top Upside earners are making as much as $300 a month. So to find out how much you can earn, click the link in the description to download Upside. And also, you're gonna wanna use code KyleHatesHiking to get an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas. You can also just scan the QR code that's on the screen right now to claim this offer. One more time, folks, click that link or scan that QR code, promo code Kyle Hates Hiking. Thank you so much to Upside for sponsoring this video and helping reduce a lot of my expenses. It's been awesome. And with that said, let's get back to these stories and these disturbing photos. So Tony and Harold are on their hike, and at some point along the way, Tony unfortunately fell off a cliff. And so after this happened, Harold did what hopefully anybody in this situation would do, and he called 911.
911, what's the address, the emergency?
Hello, my name is Harold Henthorne. I'm in the Rocky Mountain National Park.
Okay.
I need an Alpine Mountain Rescue Team immediately.
Okay, what is your exact location?
My exact location is Deer Mountain, North Summit, about 1 mile south of the visitor center.
Okay, I'm going to transfer you to the park, so hang on the line. You're going to hear some clicking, and right now I'm pulling up your lat and your long on my phone here. Let me try it one more time before I transfer you.
National Park is This is Estes, and we have a gentleman on Deer Mountain. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. My wife has fallen from a rock on the north summit of Deer Mountain, on the Deer Mountain Trail, and she's in really critical condition. She's had a bad fall.
How far
her
did
beach
she
is out
fall, sir?
30, 40 feet, 30 feet.
30, 40 feet.
I think 30 feet.
30 feet. Are you with
I
her
can't
now?
be sure. I am. Let me be sure that you know my location first. We have really bad cell coverage.
And tell me some things about the patient.
She is a white female, 50 years old, great health. She has respiration approximately 5 to 8 beats a minute. Her pulse is about between 60 and 80 beats a minute.
Okay, what's her main injury?
Head injury.
Head injury.
Concussion.
Okay, any other injuries?
To be internal,
Is she conscious and breathing?
No, she's not. She has not been conscious. She is breathing. Anywhere between 5 and 8 beats a minute now.
Okay, hold on just a second.
Okay. Here's the thing. I will pay any and all expenses for a helicopter. I don't care if it's private. I don't care if it's commercial. It wouldn't matter if it's medevac. I'll pay any and all expenses right now.
Okay.
Have you drop a paramedic down here?
So on the surface, Harold sounds caring and determined to save his wife. I mean, he even told the dispatcher that he would happily pay whatever cost it took to send a helicopter out there to the scene as soon as possible. But with that said, when the police analyzed this 911 call, that's not the conclusion that they came to. They came to a very different one, we'll say. Now, while Harold Henthorne was saying all the right things on this call, his tone just didn't sound quite right. It almost seemed as though he had practiced the call beforehand. He sounded just cold and he sounded calculated. And this was certainly a red flag for the police, but things got even worse when they listened to the part of the call where Harold was supposedly trying to give his wife CPR. Harold told 911 that he did know how to perform CPR, but according to the police's interpretation of the call, it didn't really seem like he was trying very hard to save his wife. The dispatcher also tried to help coach him through the process, but of course that didn't work. And it was actually later revealed that the texts that Harold sent to his brother were sent at the same time that he was supposed to be performing the CPR on his wife. So it definitely seemed like something fishy was going on, and this suspicion would end up rising to whole new heights when investigators searched Harold Henthorne's car. Inside of his car, they found a trail map of the area around Deer Mountain, which was obviously where they were hiking, with the Deer Mountain Trail in particular highlighted in pink, which is normal enough, right? I mean, maybe it's a little bit odd that the hikers left the map behind instead of taking it with them on the trail, but still nothing out of the ordinary there, I guess. I mean, I've probably highlighted routes on maps before. What was out of the ordinary, however, was the fact that the exact rock outcropping that Tony had fallen from was marked on the map with an X. Again, my understanding here is that the map was left in the car before the couple started their hike, which meant that Harold had marked that spot prior to his wife falling, not afterwards, which is obviously very suspicious, right? So that was another red flag, and the suspicion did not stop there, by the way. Investigators start looking through the photos that the couple took on their hike before Tony fell. I mean, these are her last photos after all. And they noticed this one in particular. Tony is pictured here looking through a pair of binoculars, which would have presumably been recovered from the scene of her death. However, investigators have asserted that they couldn't find these binoculars, which is a little bit bizarre, isn't it? Still though, while all this evidence I've discussed so far is, yeah, it's bizarre and even suspicious, it's still far from proof that Harold intentionally pushed his wife off the cliff, right? Obviously, you need more proof in a case like this, but the bizarreness and the suspicion doesn't stop here either. When investigators started digging into Harold's background, the case was instantly taken to a whole new level because, as it turns out, Toni Henthorn was not the first wife of Harold's to die under suspicious circumstances. In 1995, Harold and his first wife, named Sandra Lynn Henthorn, got a flat tire on their Jeep when they were driving on a remote Colorado road. Allegedly, Harold and Sandra had stopped to change a flat tire or something like that when Sandra accidentally dropped a lug nut underneath the Jeep. And so she goes down to try to retrieve it. She's kind of underneath the Jeep. And when that happened, the Jeep somehow fell off of the jack and it crushed her to death. This accident was briefly investigated, it sounds like, but it was ultimately ruled an accident. And this conveniently allowed Harold to collect $300,000 from a life insurance payment, which he allegedly used to just live off of basically for many years afterwards. And to kind of bring this full circle, as he did in that case with his first wife, Harold had in fact taken out life insurance policies on his second wife. These ones, by the way, to a tune of some $4.5 million. There was also some other sketchy stuff in his past. He had apparently lied about being employed, lied about starting various companies. And again, this is all just alleged, I guess. We don't know for sure, but apparently he hadn't worked a real job in years. When investigators began questioning Harold about the accident with Tony, they quickly caught him changing his story. In fact, between what he told investigators and what he told Tony's brother, Harold produced at least 4 different versions of events from that fateful day when Tony was killed. So, yeah, it's not good, folks. And in case you're still not convinced, in 2011, roughly a year or so before her tragic accident, Tony was seriously injured when a piece of plywood that her and Harold were moving accidentally fell on her. It's now suspected that this was not an accident at all, but rather Harold's first attempt at killing his wife Toni in order to cash out on her life insurance policy. Harold Henthorn had no good explanation for why he marked that location of Toni's fall on the map prior to her actually falling, and ultimately, in 2015, he was convicted for murdering Toni Henthorn and sentenced to life in prison. These photos that the couple took together just moments before Toni died will remain a haunting reminder that even though a couple and a relationship looks normal and happy in a photo, that does not mean that disaster and evil aren't possible, even if it is obviously extremely rare. So the photos of Toni and Harold Henthorn did indeed look quite normal, but that is not the case for the last photo of the next hiker I'm going to be telling you about. This photo, taken in 1991, is the last photo of 12-year-old Jared Negretti. And nearly 33 years after this photo was taken, he is still nowhere to be found. On July 19th, 1991, a Boy Scout troop based in Southern California went on an overnight backpacking trip in the area around San Gorgonio Mountain. One of the troop's members was a 12-year-old boy named Jared Negretti. He was in 8th grade at the time, and he was from El Monte, California, and this was apparently the first time that he would ever spend the night in the backcountry. So in addition to him, there were 5 other scouts in the troop, and also, of course, an adult leader, the chaperone, I guess you could say. And so they're climbing up this mountain, and by 6 p.m. that evening, the group was almost at the very top, but apparently Jared had fallen behind a little bit on the climb up. And this wasn't too concerning initially, but it did catch the attention of another group of hikers who actually informed the troop leader about him kind of lagging behind. Apparently this group of hikers had noticed Jared cutting switchbacks on his way up the mountain and had instructed him not to do this because it's bad trail etiquette. Now, when these hikers informed the troop leader of Jared's location, the troop leader decided that he would just stay put for the time being and then link back up with Jared on the way back down the mountain. I mean, he probably figured that Jared couldn't have been that far away. Like, right? Like, come on, how far could he be? I'm just gonna say this was a decision that the troop leader would soon come to regret, because once the Boy Scout troop started to descend the mountain, they quickly realized that Jared was nowhere to be found. So this is a pretty famous case. It's also, you know, somewhat old too, early 90s. And so it's been scrutinized to death. And so I don't know. I just don't want to spend that long criticizing the troop leader for this Boy Scout group. But at the same time, I've done enough of these videos to know what a lot of you guys are going to be talking about in the comments and pointing out in the comments. And so I will just say, leaving a 12-year-old boy or any member of your group that you're like the leader of, that you're chaperoning behind, that is just incredibly irresponsible. And I'm also sure that the troop leader regrets his actions that day. I mean, it was just a big mistake. Jared was obviously a little bit slower of a hiker than everybody else. And so what they probably should have done was had him actually in front. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe you could put him in the middle, just not in the back, because when you do that, that's when people get left behind. And I also understand, I'm sure it's not easy at all to like oversee a group of young boys like this out in the woods, especially by yourself with no other help from another adult. But like, I don't know, I had to mention that. So realizing the gravity of the situation when they couldn't find Jared, the troop wasted no time reporting him missing. They were planning on camping somewhere in the backcountry on their way back down the mountain, but instead of doing that, they actually all hiked out in the pitch dark so that they could go get some help. Authorities wasted no time getting out and searching for Jared, and they also began to take stock of the items that he was known to have been carrying at the time of his disappearance. Now again, he was out there for an overnight backcountry trip, and so they knew that Jared had some like limited camping gear, he had some snacks, and he also had a 2-quart water bottle. They also knew that the weather and the temperatures at that time were pretty mild, thankfully, and I'm sure that was very encouraging, because even with the like limited amount of camping gear that Jared had, they knew that if they could find him quickly, he would probably be okay. I mean, he wasn't gonna freeze to death, and there was also plenty of water in the area apparently, and so they didn't fear that he would die of dehydration. And so they're out there looking for him, and you know, they must have been feeling somewhat optimistic, although obviously it's a very scary situation. And I imagine that this optimism would have grown because very early on into the search, investigators found some, I'll just say, important clues that signaled that they were on the right track. They found some footprints on the ground that matched the shoes that Jared was known to have been wearing during his disappearance. Now, they also found some snack wrappers, and they even found Jared's film camera. Perhaps there were some photos on this camera that they could use to like pinpoint his location, or at the very least, you know, kind of indicate where he was planning on heading. So they obviously took this roll of film and got it developed immediately, and this revealed that Jared had taken 12 photos. 11 of these photos were just, you know, shots of the scenery, right? Presumably taken actually before he even went missing. However, the last photo on the roll of film was much different. When investigators saw this last photo, I can only imagine that it probably sent chills straight up their spine. This was the last photo on the film roll. It's a close-up selfie of Jared's face, and it's assumed that this photo was taken at night. The flash had gone off in the photo, so at the very least, the lighting must have been low wherever he took it. And also, I guess I should mention here, this disturbing photo would turn out to be Jared's last photo. And it also, unfortunately, provided no additional clues into his location. Investigators believe that Jared had like slid down the mountain, possibly to reach a river that was situated down below. And during this slide, he may have lost the camera and the food wrappers, or he maybe just left them on the ground accidentally. Once again, this was a valuable clue, and so searchers like zeroed in on this area where the items were found, and they spent weeks searching. Thousands of individuals joined the search in addition to helicopters and searchers on horseback. They had this huge effort, and despite all of it, no sign of Jared was found ever again. And that is exactly, I should say, where this case stands today. So I'm gonna ask, what the hell could have happened to Jared Negretti? There has been a number of theories that have been floated around over the years, but none of these theories seem to have any, like, strong evidence behind them, I'll say. At least not that I'm aware of. People have speculated that Jared may have been attacked by an animal or something, or fallen down the mountain. And yes, of course, the theory of foul play has been tossed around as well. Now, I'm not in the business of solving the stories that I talk about or the cases I talk about. I just try to tell the stories, and so my personal opinion on, what I think happened doesn't really mean much. I'm sure most of you understand that. But I will say a lot of the time when I cover these stories, I kind of have some leading theory that I think is most likely. Again, for what little that's worth. But I just want to say with this one, I really don't know. There's just such a lack of evidence, and so I don't know. What do you guys think about what happened here? Leave your comments and let me know. And of course, please keep Jared and his family in your hearts. You never know, but I feel like we likely won't ever know the full story behind his disturbing last photo. But for our next story, quite the opposite is true. For this story, we know exactly what happened, and the details are incredibly bizarre and incredibly haunting. In 2014, a group of 6 Rutgers University students were hiking in the Apshawa Preserve in West Milford, New Jersey. They're hiking along, and while they were doing this, they experienced a literal worst-case scenario on the trail. Now, I want to say that New Jersey is like the most densely populated state in all of the United States, and so it's not exactly the kind of place where you would expect to encounter a dangerous wild animal, right? But with that said, there definitely are bears in New Jersey, black bears in particular. And while the group of students were hiking along, they realized that one of these bears was hot on their tails. 22-year-old Darsh Patel began snapping photos of the bear, and in each one of these photos, it showed the 300-pound bear, this is a massive bear, getting closer and closer to the hiker's location. After these photos were taken, the bear got even closer to them, and realizing the danger that they were in, they all fled into different directions. For whatever reason, just dumb luck, or lack of luck, I should say, Patel was the hiker that the bear zeroed in on, and he reportedly ran up a rock formation with the bear right behind him. He yelled out to his friends, telling them to just continue running, and then tragically, he was never seen alive ever again. The rest of Patel's friends were unharmed, and so they regrouped eventually, and they called the police, and hiked out of the woods, obviously. The police were immediately dispatched, and within just a few short hours, they found Patel's body, and they also found the bear that had killed him. This bear was still circling around his body as if it was protecting it as a food source. Just incredibly disturbing. Police tried to scare the bear off, but this bear would not give up, and so eventually they shot the bear dead. So this is obviously extremely scary, and it's also extremely rare. And I actually want to illustrate to you just how rare this is. I did some Googling around and some research about this, and I'm pretty confident that to this day, Darsh Patel is the only person to ever die from a bear attack in the state of New Jersey, at least since records have been kept of this kind of thing. There have been other attacks, to be clear, but I don't believe that anyone else has ever died. Bear attacks are just so rare in general, but black bear attacks are even more rare, is my understanding. There are a lot more black bears in the United States than, say, grizzly bears, and so the The raw number of attacks might be higher for black bears, but grizzly bears are known to be more aggressive than black bears. Still extremely rare to have any issues with those either. But I don't know, I'm just trying to illustrate that with a black bear, this event is so uncommon that Patel basically died in an event that is literally like 1 in a million chances. But still, if this event is so rare, it happened. And so the obvious question is, why? Why did it happen? And the first story that I had when I learned about this story was if the group of hikers was behaving like irresponsibly in any way. Like, were they getting too close to the bear intentionally? Were they messing with it? Were they doing anything like that? I couldn't find a ton of information on this story, to be honest, but I will say that I did not read any reports indicating that the group could have been at fault in any way. And I feel like if they did something wrong like this, if they had been messing with the bear or being irresponsible, basically, I feel like the authorities would have specified that, as a warning and lesson to other hikers. It seems like this particular bear was just hungry, and that's strange because black bears almost never view humans as a potential food source, but on extremely rare occasions, I guess, these predatory attacks can happen, and unfortunately, that's just what happened in this tragic case. I also want to note, I'm not a bear expert, obviously, you could probably tell that by now, but I do know that you're not supposed to run away from bears that are behaving aggressively towards you because this can trigger their chasing instincts. This particular group did run away from the bear, and so it's possible that Patel may have survived if they had all kind of stuck together and yelled and thrown rocks and stuff at the bear. But with that said, I also can't blame anyone for wanting to just book it when they're confronted with such a dangerous situation. It's very sad, and my heart goes out to Darsh Patel, his friends, his family, and of course those other friends and students that he was there with that fateful day. Even though search and rescue wasn't involved in this story, at least that I could find, for this video's call out, I want to encourage you to check out the volunteer, emphasis on the volunteer, nonprofit group called New Jersey Search and Rescue. They work to keep people safe in the state's backcountry, and once again, they're all unpaid volunteers doing this exhausting and dangerous work entirely for free. I love giving back to these organizations, and so I've made a donation to them, and I encourage you to do the same, even if it's just a few bucks. It doesn't have to be a lot. I'll have their website in the description. YouTube seems to think that you'd enjoy watching this video of mine next, and so give it a try, and thank you guys so much for watching. I'm so blessed to have this channel and to have such amazing subscribers, and I'll see you in the next one.